That was the coolest thing I think that has ever happened to this channel.
I think to YouTube ever.
That was
Brak,
like
that was super
perfectly timed. Brak, you are the man, the myth, the legend. Well, welcome everyone. Megan and I didn't discuss who was going to do the introduction here, so I guess I'll do it if that's all right.
Go for it.
We are Digital Hammurabi. Have my beautiful wife Megan at the top, and with us tonight is our amazing friend Brak, who is the person behind the
spectacular theme music.
Yeah, the theme music. As you can tell, he just played all that live. In case anybody was wondering, that was not a recording. That was him with his sitar playing live for us. So, Brak, how are you this evening?
I am doing, my friend. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Megan because she's the I don't know, the one that does this better than I do. But Brak, it is amazing to have you with us, and we really appreciate your time.
Oh, of course, man.
And I'm really sorry to everyone for starting late. That's totally my fault.
Yeah, sorry about that. So Brak is awesome and very kindly agreed to come on the Q&A because he has a quite unique perspective on a lot of the Hebrew questions we get. Brak is an Orthodox Jew and knows way more about that than really anyone else that I know. So we asked him if he would come and help us out with some questions. So if you have Hebrew Bible questions or anything about rabbinic literature, tonight is the night to ask.
We do have a little bit of feedback, and I can't figure out where it's coming from.
I've got mine muted.
That's okay. I mean, it's not terrible. Oh, I got to put the call-in number.
Yes, there is a call-in number.
I totally.
While Josh is getting the call-in number, we've actually got some questions that I'm going to ask Brak while we get started. So from Tormund Running, who emailed us, do you think there was a slave market in Jerusalem? And that was for Josh, because Tormund did not know that Brak would be joining us. So if Brak, do you have any thoughts on slave markets in Jerusalem at all?
I would not know about that.
Excellent. On to the next one. We will save that one for when Josh is not occupied with production. So someone asked about the double yod in the divine name.
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm going to put my headphones in because
sure.
Coming from me.
Okay. So yes, we do. So someone's asking if they can call in. Yes, we will have a call-in number for you.
I'm putting it up right now.
Yes, in a minute. So you will be able to call in. Just quickly, what we're going to do with the call-in is we're going to get you on. You can ask your question, and then we're going to be very rude and just kick you out because we actually don't want to overrun. We don't want to keep Brak much longer than we already have done because we're starting late. So we're not going to have time for chatting at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not terribly good. I'm not terribly good at making it so that I end things correctly. Sorry, I'm trying to get that Zoom number up, and it looks really tiny. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just talking to myself now.
So Brak is back with us. So Brak, the double yod in the divine name. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, because that was a question that was asked previously.
Yes.
So in Judaism, when it comes to the divine name of God, the Tetragrammaton, anything that is written on has to be treated with respect. So it can't be thrown away. So as a result of that, whenever you have an old Torah scroll or any ritual object that would have the name contained in it, once it was no longer able to be used, it would have to be buried. This is why we have Qumran, for example, and this is why we have the Cairo Geniza, is because these texts couldn't be thrown away and they were buried. And then, centuries later, we stumble upon them. It's like, hey, look at all these old texts we have. Isn't this great? Now, in order to avoid needing to bury something within a Geniza, which is a fancy word for a cemetery for text, basically, they started to use 2 yods to represent the Tetragrammaton. So by doing so, the divine name wasn't being written, and therefore it did not need to be buried. So depending on the text, whether it's the prayer book text, whether it's the Talmud, or some kind of commentary, you'll have different variations where you would have either 2 yods. Sometimes it'll be 3 yods. The Cairo Geniza typically has 3 yod format. And one of my favorite, the triangle of 3 yods, where there would be 1 yod superimposed upon the other 2. And again, that was to, avoid writing the divine name and having to bury things.
Oh, well, Megan just left. Sorry. I guess that's Oliver. There was another question, and actually, I think you may have answered the other one. Breck, it was about the defilement. Yeah, you were talking about the kinesis. I think you may have actually answered the other question that person asked, interestingly enough. I don't know if you're...
Oh, yeah. I guess I kind of did. Yeah, because you just can't throw, these texts, in the garbage can. You had to bury them. So, yeah.
And it's amazing that that principle is, was in place because, again, we wouldn't have the textual evidence that we do have today.
Correct.
If not for that. So that's fantastic. So Megan, he has very swiftly and adeptly answered both of those questions. So
excellent. Well, Josh, sorry, someone is saying that the meeting ID is incorrect.
Nuh-uh. Sorry. Good grief. So this is what happens when I get home literally 5 minutes before we have to start.
And then we have technological problems.
734-782-168. No, that's what it's saying it is.
All right then.
734-782-168. Yeah, that's correct. Huh. It's weird.
Oh, I think for viewers, the subscribe button is over the last 2 digits, so the person did not realize there were 9 digits.
Oh, oops. I can move it, perhaps.
Keep it at the top.
Yes. Is that better, everyone? Yeah, right. I forgot about that. And now we have a caller. Very good.
Hooray.
All right. So just so that everybody knows, when you call in, please make sure that your video is turned off because it will really screw things up, and you will be muted. And then as soon as I unmute you, it will tell you that you have been unmuted. So here we go. Our first caller, Brak, if you're good to go.
I am ready.
All right. Here we go. All right, caller, you are on the air.
I heard I'm unmuted. Am I on?
You are.
You are.
How you doing?
Okay, cool. I'm great. How are you?
Doing well.
Okay, I got a question about the Hebrew in Daniel 9. So the question has to do with, if you look at verses 26 and 27, it seems to be Antiochus Epiphanes' resume. I mean, it seems like everything in there describes what Antiochus Epiphanes did in the last 7 years of his life. But some of the scholars I read said that the Hebrew is very difficult in the last part of Daniel. So I just wanted to get a comment and see if are we reading? I'm reading in English. Or am I getting an accurate translation, or is it just too difficult to translate?
Awesome. All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So Brak, if you want to talk about that a little bit, and then I have a couple of things I can say about it as well.
Go ahead, because you're more familiar with grammatical linguistically things than I am.
So there are a couple of things that are involved there. So there's I don't think there's any question from, in my opinion, but in general scholarly consensus, that Daniel 9, Daniel 10 to 12, really everything after Daniel 7 moving forward, and even Daniel chapter 2. But these are things, particularly the latter half of the book, these are texts that are constructed around Antiochus Epiphanes. So for those that are listening that don't know, during the 2nd century, right around, the 160s, you had this really tumultuous time in Judea, and so Antiochus Epiphanes was somebody that was a lot of persecution, and you had so you had these prophetic texts, let's call them that for the sake of argument, or for the simplicity's sake, that are they're prophesying about all these horrible things that Antiochus Epiphanes, or that a king was going to do, a ruler was going to do. Now, of course, if you look at this from a fundamentalist evangelical or fundamentalist perspective, they take these as prophecies concerning the future millennial reign of Christ, perhaps, or depending on your interpretation of the text, about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. But at any rate, Jesus is the one that is supposed to be the one who is prophesied about in Daniel 9. Okay. Lots of problems with that, but to try to stick to the question that was at hand, Daniel 9 is part of apocalyptic literature, right? And apocalyptic literature, the apocalyptic genre, is intentionally very complicated and intentionally ambiguous. That's the way that it was written. So it could be, because of its ambiguity, it could be applied to many different historical contexts. That's the way it was written. So this is why everybody has an interpretation of the book of Revelation in the New Testament, right? Everybody has something different that they can apply it to, and you can see it throughout history. Oh, this must be the end times because of this or because of that. It's apocalyptic literature, and apocalyptic literature is intentionally ambiguous. But yes, the grammar of Daniel 9 is in no way straightforward, and the lexemes themselves, I think, are difficult. So it's very difficult, intentionally so, I think. Awesome. Brak, if you have anything you want to follow up with, that would be fantastic.
No, I have nothing really to add to that.
All right. Sorry, I have some questions that, while we're waiting for more calls to come in, Brak, I have some questions that we could talk about if you'd like.
Yeah, sure thing, bro.
Unless, Megan, did you have?
So there is one. We had an email about slave markets in Jerusalem that I said we would get to this live stream. So Tormund Running asks, do you think there was a slave market in Jerusalem? And the background for my question is a bit odd, but I'm having a discussion with someone about whether Babylon in Revelation is Jerusalem or Rome. And Revelation 18:13 lists multiple slave items, and among them is slaves. So I wonder if it's likely that traders came to Jerusalem with slaves.
One of the things that's conspicuous. Brak, she asked you that earlier, and you. Okay, sorry, I didn't want to step on your toes there.
No, you're fine. I do have something I want to say towards the end, but you go ahead.
Okay. So there is something that is conspicuously absent from the Hebrew Bible, and that is the direct reference to sale of slaves. Now, you do have references in Exodus 21, where if a fellow Israelite sells himself or is sold to you, but these types of actual, it's not always terribly explicit. We would expect it to be more explicit, I think, given what we know about the ancient Near East and the way that slaves were bought and sold there. By the way, Oliver is still crying. I don't know if you can hear him. But Greenberg actually wrote an article on this, or was it Greenberg? Anyway, I can look it up if people would like the article. Please let me know. But what he does is actually very interesting. He looks at texts, Akkadian texts from the early first millennium. I think that's where they come from, early to mid first millennium, that are in the region of Palestine, of Israel. And then he looks at rabbinic literature and rabbinic writings. And, Brak, we've talked about this before, about how, there are lots of texts in rabbinic writings about slaves and, the practices around that. And what he argues is that if you have the practice before the period of the Hebrew Bible and the practice seen in the rabbinic writings following the Hebrew Bible, then it's almost assuredly, and it's not just that they're there, it's that you have a line of tradition that's almost specifically referenced, that connect the two. That the argument then is that, and I think we just got a super chat. Yeah, we did. Sorry, I had the alert box at the bottom. Sorry. I don't remember what I was saying. What was I saying? Anyway, that it would almost assuredly have been practiced in the Hebrew Bible. So whether we could say specifically about Jerusalem, I don't know. And again, I think it would probably vary based on period. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would be consistent throughout. But yeah, I mean, I think the slave trade was almost assuredly, common practice. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to mention, because the asker inquired in regards with, in the book of Revelations, one thing that's very important to realize is that the book of Revelation is what's known as a liturgical prophecy. And it's written to an audience that would have been familiar with the liturgy of the temple and the synagogue and the early church. So when a person is trying to decipher and trying to figure out, what the different symbolism means and everything, you have to look at it through the lens of the liturgy, because that's how it was being written. And even a glossary look at the text, you see all the liturgical elements, where you have, people, praying and bowing, incense being burned. I mean, you just look at all the symbolism, it's all liturgically based. And in fact, I'm in the process of making a video that hopefully will be out within a month or two, that deals with how the 7 seals of Revelation is actually tied into the annual reading cycle of the Torah, and with the 7 days of creation. So it's a parallel between those two. So hopefully I'll get that out soon.
That is awesome. And I will have you back on here to talk about it.
Sounds good, my friend.
That's awesome. And that sounds really exciting. Revelation is it's a very complicated book. And again, since it's apocalyptic, it's meant to be that way.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Sorry, Megan, I've stepped on your interview here. My bad.
Oh no, this is a joint thing, honey, and you two are the Hebrew people, so I'm gonna leave you guys to handle the questions.
By the way, if you don't mind, if we ask the chat, what does everybody think about the format where Megan's got her own screen or whatever? Because I don't know, I think it's cool.
It's definitely easier.
Yes, it is.
Definitely easier.
I don't get to kiss you though. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, this is true. We're less cute in this format, but I feel possibly more professional.
I don't know. You're pretty cute.
So Trevor Lunn has a question for Brak. If the oldest extant Hebrew texts date to some couple of hundred years BCE, how do scholars assign dates to the original writings?
I'll answer what I know about that, and then Josh, he will probably want to chime in to give his input on it. So what I know, this is just in the periphery, because my main field of study is liturgics and late Second Temple period Judaism. So in terms of textual criticism, not really what I really studied. But what I do know from the interaction that I did have is typically like the text that we have from the Kaur Geniza and the text that we have from Qumran. They dated using two different methods. One is by dating the script that's used on the text themselves, and another method is by carbon dating it. So that's essentially where we get the dates from in terms of that.
Yeah, and I think that then trying to push backwards and to try to say, okay, if this text is carbon dated to the second half of the second century BCE, let's say something like what was I thinking of? That's okay. Anyway, if it dates to that period, how do we know when maybe the oral tradition or maybe even the written tradition first came about? How do we date those things? It's very difficult, Trevor.
Yeah, very speculative.
Yeah,
and if we're really honest and transparent about it, there's a lot of guessing and speculation.
And this is why if you read, and I'm sure Brak has read this stuff too, if you read through Pentateuchal studies where you're trying to understand are there sources, are there individual sources that we see in the Pentateuch, or do we see more groupings of stories that are brought into sources, and that there are layers that are placed on top as opposed to consistent sources? It's very difficult. And even if you go back to something as basic as the JEDP theory that Wellhausen, is made popular by Wellhausen, he had not definitive dates, but like in mind, this source dates to the 10th century, and this source to the 8th, and this source to the 6th, and those sorts of things. And part of the way that you try to get at those things is you're looking at what's in the source itself, what's in the text. So, for example, with the book of Deuteronomy, sections of Deuteronomy are dated to the time of Josiah, and the reason that they're dated to the time of Josiah is because of what Deuteronomy represents and what happened with Josiah. Josiah going into the temple and finding these things, and then bringing about this great reform. What is it? 621, I think, is when that was dated to. So, but yes, this is why scholars debate all these things. We have these dates, like, okay, we know when the Qumran texts are. Pretty. It's still somewhat, a range because it's carbon dated and dated based on paleography. But we're, we can get down to like within 25 years or 50 years or whatever. But before that, there are people that'll hold to 8th century writings of something, and some people that'll hold to 6th century, and some people down to the third. I mean, it's just it becomes difficult. It's based on what's in the text itself. We have a lot of super chats coming through.
We do. So Skylar asked, if you were a pancake, what kind of pancake would you be? I would be a banana and Nutella pancake because I think that combination is just fantastic.
I would be made out of cardboard so that no one would eat me.
Ooh, that was smart.
That was very smart.
Yes, I would be blueberry.
Ooh, blueberry, nice. So we had a super chat from Old Man Dan for $3.69. No question, but he says that we have received his first 2 super chats ever on any channel, and keep doing you, which we really appreciate that. And he just sent another $2. Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate that.
That's amazing.
And Skeptics Propaganda for $4.99. Is the divine name in the Kal or Hifil? And what is the verb root? Can't call in, sorry. Hope to call in soon, though. Thanks.
Sorry, Brak, if you want to.
You can go ahead, because I see it as a noun, so it's not a verb.
Oh,
so.
I see.
So it's like neither. But, there's a Jewish tradition that is based upon the phrase, he is, he was, he is, and he will be. So, I mean, obviously those are, verb forms, but go ahead. That's a grammatical thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's debate. Part of what would be required is to understand the pointing, the correct pointing, to try to understand what the form would be. And there's debate about how it's supposed to be pronounced, and or how it would have been pronounced. And so, yeah. So the question comes up. Hifil is a causative form, so it could mean like he will bring it, he will make it he will make it come to be, or he will bring it to pass. If it's in the Kal, he will be, or he is, and of course you kind of get I don't think you get etymology necessarily in Exodus 3 with, Moses, who will I say? Say that I am that I am, or I will be what I will be. I think that's probably a word play based on maybe folk etymology. I'm not sure. I haven't done specific research into that. But yeah, it's difficult, I think. But I can I just saw that super chat from Skylar. He wants a real pancake. Josh cheated. But yeah, that's difficult. But I'll look some more, and I'm sure if Brak sees anything, he'll let me know about it.
Indeed.
A real pancake. Sorry, I guess I would be strawberry, but I'd be like a regular pancake with strawberry on top, like strawberries and the strawberry drizzle, or the cupcake pancake at IHOP.
You have the biggest sweet tooth of any man I think I've ever met.
What?
I mean, I'm right there with you. You've seen my my candy intake. So we have another question from the live chat. I'm going to say if anyone would like to call in and ask their question in person.
Oh, oops, we have two more. And then, but I just want to remind everybody that we promised, and this is totally my fault, we promised Brak that we would end no later than 9 o'clock, and actually a few minutes earlier we told him. So I think we'll go about 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna let him go. I know it seems like it's short, and I apologize. Again, my fault. We will have Brak back.
I am fine. I'm fine for a while.
I actually, because of that, I actually told Skylar that I would set up a stream with him. So I'm respecting everybody. I respect everyone.
And next week we will. So we had some child things to do this afternoon, which is why we were on quite so late. Next week we have nothing else planned, so we will. We'll work this out.
Well, why don't we take the phone calls?
Yeah. Okay, go for it.
Is that right?
And then, we have 2 more questions in the live chat as well. Once we've
done. All right, so we're gonna try to do these fast. So sorry, everybody. All right, caller, you're on the air. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yep, we got you. How you doing?
Okay. Hi, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Good. So you were talking about the book of Revelation, so I figured I'd ask what I think is kind of a specific question, but it's always really confused me. In Revelation 7, it's listing like the 12,000 people from each tribe who will be sealed in the end times. And it has Manasseh and Joseph, and obviously Manasseh is like one of the half tribes of Joseph. And then it leaves out Ephraim and Dan. And I was wondering if there was any like historical reason for why that might be, because it seems like a pretty egregious oversight if it's just an oversight.
Excellent. All right, we're gonna mute you, and thank you for your question, Brak. If you wanna respond to that.
Yeah. So, like I said previously, with the other thing in regards to Revelation, it's a liturgical prophecy. So you have to look at it throughout that context. So I do not know offhand the significance of the particular listing that is given, because yes, it is different. When you look at the tribes of Israel, you actually, in a way, can have 14 different tribes. So you have the actual 12 sons, and then you have the 2 sons of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, that become separate tribes themselves because of Levi not getting inheritance of land. So you kind of have this weird ambiguity in regards to what is a tribe and what's not a tribe. So obviously the book of Revelation is playing on that in a way. How that is, I don't know offhand. Okay. But that's a great question, and it should be looked into. But again, through the lens of liturgy, would be able to give you a better answer than not.
Definitely. And we're going to do some work in Revelation. I've just actually ordered some more commentaries on it. So, all right. Caller, you are on the air. Good evening. Can you hear us?
Is this me?
Yep, yeah. It sure is.
Okay, so my question is, what is like the scholarly opinion or consensus regarding the origin of the Samaritans when they broke off from the rest of the Israelites Jews?
Okay, yeah, that is a great question. Brak, do you wanna field that one?
Yeah. So basically what you had happen was the northern tribes were taken captive by the Assyrians. And then shortly after that, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin were taken captive by Babylon. So what the practice was during that time period is that they would displace people because there was a less chance of people revolting if they weren't in their own motherland. So it kind of like neutered, national feelings and, potential rights and such. So when the Jews went back into the land, when they came out of Babylonian captivity, because the northern tribes never came back, there were non-Jews that were living there that were placed by the Assyrians previously to their return. And they had adopted some of the Jewish practices and some of the Jewish customs, but not all of them. So they were not halakhically or according to Jewish law considered to be Jews. And there were always tension between the Samaritans and the Jews because of that rejection and interaction between the two, where you had during the Second Temple period, they would interfere with the Jews honoring their calendar. So let me kind of like back up to explain what that means exactly. So during the time of the temple, and when we had the Sanhedrin up to the end of the 4th century, the calendar was based upon the sighting of the new moon. So it required for there to be 2 witnesses to see the new moon, to go before the Sanhedrin, and to testify that they saw the new moon. And they would be examined. They would be shown different charts and diagrams of the moon and asked, what did the moon look like, in order to verify that the testimony that they gave was true. And then upon 2 witnesses being validated that they gave proper testimony that there is a new moon, it would be proclaimed. Now, what they would do is, if you've seen the movie Lord of the Rings, how they, lit the little torches, or if you saw, what was that one Disney movie with the dogs where they had like the barking?
All Dogs Go to Heaven?
No, it wasn't that. I don't know if it was.
Saw 3.
That was definitely it.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But there's some Disney movie where some dogs were barking, and then like a few miles away they heard and they started barking. It was like to communicate an idea. It was some Disney movie with dogs. But anyways, regardless. So what and they did this in order for the Jews in diaspora to know when the new moon was. And this was very important in the 1st month and the 7th month, because the only way you know when Passover is, or Day of Atonement and Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot, is by knowing when the 1st of the month is. So the Samaritans, because sometimes they were a-holes, they would put up false fires. So the new moon wouldn't be declared, and they would go ahead and light torches to confuse people, down the road, several miles away, and they would light the torches, and all the Jews in the diaspora would think that the new moon had been proclaimed when it wasn't. And because of that, they had to stop that practice, and they had to resort to sending people out, on horseback, basically, to the different Jewish communities in the diaspora to inform them, which caused significant delay. So sometimes they wouldn't get to certain Jewish communities until 30, 60 days after the fact. And this is why you have within modern Judaism the practice of observing 2 days for the holidays. Because if someone was living in England, for example, since Megan's from England, obviously you wouldn't get news within 14 days that the new moon, prior to Pesach had happened. So what do? You observe 2 days, because you'd be doing right on one of those 2 days. So now a lot of people still do that because of custom. Some people just do the 1 day because obviously we don't have that calendar system anymore where we use the torches. We have a set calendar now. So, yeah.
Cool.
So the idea of a good Samaritan is kind of laughable when you understand what a pain they were to us, during that time period.
Cool.
So we've had people say that the movie we're looking for is 101 Dalmatians.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can rely on our chat to know these things. And we have several questions from the live chat. I've said we're not taking any more now.
Well,
anything asked will be saved for next time.
Sorry, we may have to save.
We may have to save all of them.
So I've got one more caller.
Right. Okay.
because it's a call-in program, I want to give.
Yeah, we need to
preference
get. Okay, everyone, if you've asked a question and it has not been asked,
We're gonna
I
save
am
it.
saving them. We will answer them next week.
So we'll do this last call, and then
Okay.
I think a super chat is coming. We'll read that, and then we're gonna end it. And I'm really sorry. It seems
just
rushed.
Quickly, if there are specific questions for Brak that have been asked, I will email them to him and ask if he would be able to provide a very brief answer, and we will read those next week.
Cool. All right, caller. You are on the air. You're the last caller for the evening. Hi.
Hey, it's Chris.
Hey, Chris. I think I know you.
My brother
Yeah.
from another mother. It bothers you.
Well, I've got a question for you, Dr. Josh and Megan.
Yes.
And it's to do with the goddess Ishtar.
Oh, Easter? Yeah. One in the same.
I'm seriously about to lose it on my Twitter because people keep
I
trolling me
saw.
about that now.
I saw.
It is driving me nuts. But my question is, it also kind of is also in regard to Inanna as well. But I've got two monographs that I've been reading on both Inanna and Ishtar. In Jacobson's The Harps That Once, he tries to argue that the death, quote unquote, and resurrection of Inanna is tied to vegetative cycles due to the infertility that's associated with the land and livestock and everything with her death. And a similar thing is also argued in the monograph by what's his name? Lepenkivi in the Ishtar's Descent and Resurrection. So I'm wondering what your guys' take on that is, actually.
Unfortunately, I have done precisely zero research into dying and rising gods, so you probably know more about this than I do. Generally speaking, I would take things that 🀭 has to say quite seriously. He was an excellent scholar. Some of his ideas have been had fallen out of fashion, and people have moved on from that because he was writing quite some time ago now. But I can't really comment specifically. I mean, I think that there may be something to it. You definitely have Inanna and her association with the crops and the grain storage. So extending that association to some kind of vegetative dying deity role thing is possible, but I would need to do a lot more research into it to see if it actually holds water or if it's just like a folk etymology thing. And
I haven't looked at it either, but I suspect another connection is probably Dumuzi. So Dumuzi has a lot of connection to Damu, the earlier god. They I think in a lot of ways get syncretized, but Damu was the vegetation god, and so because Dumuzi is such an intricate part of this, descent of Inanna, I think there's probably a likely connection there. But yeah.
Sorry, just to interrupt. What I will say is that lumping all deities who seem to have a dying, rising component into the same category, which is what things like the Golden Bough and other mythological texts often try and do, I think is a massive oversimplification. It is not something that I particularly enjoy or agree with. So even if Inanna and Dumuzi do have this dying rising component, I don't think that necessarily makes them dying rising gods. I think that means that this is something that they do in their mythology and is one very small part of very complex mythological characteristics.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sorry to rush through this so much, guys. I really feel bad for doing that, but I do like to keep my word to everybody involved in this. So Megan, if there was a super chat, Chris, thank you for calling, by the way. Thank you everybody for calling and participating.
Sorry, I'm just typing in the side chat. All questions are being saved for next week. So if you've asked a question, I have it.
Was there a super chat that I missed?
Oh, yes, actually, there was. Sorry. Old Man Dan, $5. Thank you again. 3 super chats from one person. That's
Wow.
awesome. He says, my 3 bulldogs would tear up a cardboard pancake.
I don't feel safe anymore. Oh, goodness. Well, Brak, thank you so much for coming
of
on.
course, my friend.
And
Of
we
course.
are definitely going to have you back. Megan, did you have anything else you want to say before we?
No, I just wanted to say thank you and add to Josh's apologies.
Yeah.
We will be starting on time next week.
Brak, would you like to take us out with the?
Sure thing. Let me take my headphones off.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Give me 1 second. Okay.
Awesome.